Hello, beloved. I'm Reverend Amani, and this is week 3 of the series on freedom, the freedom that begins within, which is this incredible series that I've been enjoying so much because it is what I believe one of our greatest opportunities in spiritual life to reclaim our power. So if you've missed any of those videos, I invite you to go back and check them out. And I want to dive into what it means to not only gather the courage for yourself to show up and show out authentically and freely, but how you and I have to gather every possible resource we can to do so, because there is such enormous pressure from outside, from all the things outside of us, to dim our light and to be less than who we are. And I wanted to share a story from a young friend of mine who is this incredible dancer and who is Black and gender expansive and queer and is in a community where they are not always accepted. And the heartache of that. And yet this beautiful beloved shows up in all of their glory anyways. And what I know is required to have that kind of courage is to get people on your team, to get people in your corner, to get some of the community that can affirm you around you. And I call this talk, I had put in my notes, it's called, gathering courage. The courage to be free, the courage to live a life of freedom and authenticity. And gathering courage to me kind of is a dual process, which is the courage that you and I can gather from one another, from the community of beloveds that can hold the space for you to be all that you are. And the courage you and I can glean from that. But also the courage it takes to show up in community vulnerably, to let yourself be seen and be lifted up and be affirmed also takes courage. The truth is, authenticity is a courageous act. And I want you to have everything you can possibly have around you to gather the courage you need to shine your light like the whole world is yours, as Rumi teaches us. So let's talk a little bit about the courage to be vulnerable and community. So I'd like to share a quote with you from James Finley, who is one of the master teachers for the Center of Action and Contemplation. He shares that when you risk sharing what hurts, when you risk sharing what hurts the most in the presence of someone who will not invade you or abandon you, you can learn not to invade or abandon yourself. When you risk sharing something that deeply hurts you, and I imagine anything that is keeping you from authentically showing up, from living a life of freedom, comes with deep hurt. And when you are able to share that vulnerably with someone who is safe to share it with, key, as he says, someone who will not invade you or abandon you, which means that you get to seek out connections and relationships and community that have the capacity to hold you and see you and listen to you with such presence that they are not invading you and they're not abandoning you. And I think what that means, invading you would mean that person that you share with who's all up in your business, who's asking questions about who said that and why did that happen and and why did you say that and why did you do that and what? That's invading you. that is not the kind of listening and presence and attention that you deserve, or that will affirm and uplift you. And then the abandoning part is simply anyone who does not have the capacity to stay present with you, with whatever you are sharing. And the gift in this is giving your vulnerability to someone who can do that for you, who can bring their presence and affirmation to you in that moment, helps you to learn how to do that for yourself, right? Because not only are we afraid to show up in our wholeness because it requires vulnerability, it requires vulnerability that feels dangerous. It feels dangerous to show up that authentically, that nakedly, that shiny. One, because it's not always received well. You're not always treated well in that moment. Like my friend who shows up in dance communities as his full, awesome self and is not always treated well. So there's that danger of not being treated well, of not being received, which is scary. But there's also the danger of vulnerability that you need to have with yourself and how you are able to treat yourself well as you receive yourself vulnerably. And one of the beauties of gathering courage in community, and safe, able community, is so that you can learn to more vulnerably receive yourself and treat yourself with the same grace. You know, I find myself in my minister shoes at times listening. I do a lot of listening in my work. And I find myself having the thought often, I wish you could see me through my eyes. I wish you could see you through my eyes. I wish you could know yourself the way that I know you. Because I often am sitting across from someone who is struggling to come to terms with something about themselves, struggling to accept a behavior, a habit, a personality trait about themselves that they cannot accept. But imagine what happens when you allow someone to receive you and your vulnerability with love and attention and kindness and grace, so that you can then take that in and do that for yourself. This is the power of showing up vulnerably in community. But it needs to be the right community. It needs to be the right relationship. You need to surround yourself with the humans that can receive you in that way. And not everybody can or is able or has that capacity. And we don't even need to get into why or shame them or blame them. But you do get to get honest with yourself about who is able to give you that. And I want to share with you an idea that Rev Angel Kyoto Williams has about spiritual community that can be that safe place. The collective process, she says, is a space generated and regenerated by a diversity of voices where all is welcome and each can show up just as they are. Each shows up for themselves in the company of others, trusting to come as we are, leave as we must, get what we need, and mind our business as we do. I love this because I feel like this could be a really good set of agreements that you and I can make in community about creating a space where you will not be invaded or abandoned when you show up as you are, however you are, in all your glory. And one of those pieces is to show up just as you are. And you show up for yourself first. which means when you choose community to participate in, when you choose relationships to participate in, you get to go in knowing that this is for you. That this is so that you have a space and a place to show up just as you are. And in doing so, you make room for others to do the same, which is your service to them as well. And then there's the piece of minding our own business, right? That you and I get to create safe spaces for one another by minding our business. If there is someone showing up in a way that you don't understand, you get to just not understand. Or you get to lovingly, authentically seek understanding. And you get to expect that for yourself. Because in doing so, in creating relationships and community with these kinds of agreements, where we can collectively process our wish for greater good, where you can collectively process with others your imagination of showing up more authentically and freely and living a life of authentic freedom, doing that with others so that you can be uplifted with your vulnerability. And you can also be the place of upliftment by simply willing to show up as you are, minding your own business, allowing everyone's authenticity to be in the room, in the relationship. This is no small work, which is why I've called this talk Gathering Courage. This is no small task. But the blessings are abundant when you and I do it. When you and I have the courage to show up in community and relationships vulnerably and authentically, we are rewarded with greater capacity and courage to do that for ourselves and to go out into the world living a life of freedom, living a life of authenticity, where the ratio of peace and freedom changes and fear diminishes because you've let yourself show up vulnerably in safe community spaces. This is one of my great desires and efforts in the work at the Albuquerque Center for Spiritual Living, is to make sure that the spaces and environments you and I create together, whether they are online, like right now in the comment section, or in person during a gathering, that the environment and space you and I create together is a collective process of community where everyone is able to show up as they are and be uplifted and be a place of upliftment for others. So that you and I can walk more freely in this life, can live more authentically in this life, affirmed and appreciated. Isn't that what freedom really is? To diminish the fear, to diminish the amount of withholding you are doing in your life, to diminish the amount of limitation you are living with, thinking that that is required, that you have to sell parts of yourself or closet parts of yourself in order to gain what? A false sense of safety, a false sense of security? But when you choose to consciously and vulnerably share yourself, your whole self, in community, in relationship, to allow yourself to be seen for the beauty and wonder that you are as is. This is the special sauce of freedom as a way of life for you. This is the special sauce of freedom as a way of life for all of us. And so one of the things that I'm going to invite you to do is show up vulnerably in community. You get to show up on July 16th in person and share what's been rising in your practice. What have you been learning? What spirit highest idea for your life of freedom? And what are you learning about what you might do about that and share that in community. And for those of you who are not able to join me and Joy Lynn, practitioner Joy Lynn Hertz, in person on the 16th, join me on Zoom on July 19th at 6 p.m. And the purpose of our time together will be a question and discovery session on living a life of freedom, hosted by myself and practitioner Joy Lynn Hertz. Gather your courage to show up in community, vulnerably, and allow yourself to then take with you more courage into your life of freedom. I love you so much.